Hello and welcome to Guns and Gear. You know, I don't usually make political videos, primarily because I choose not to. But once in a while, you know, the world of politics crosses paths with the things that I enjoy. Now, I think that we all have a duty as citizens of the United States to be involved with politics. I think that it is incumbent on us to ensure that when we send representatives to local, state, and federal government, that they should reflect our ideals. Okay? And see, it's up to us to ensure that that occurs. So that means we have to really put skin in the game. We have to be involved. Now, I don't wish this video to appear as if that I give credit or endorsement to either party. Because quite frankly, there is much of both parties that I agree, and there is much of both parties that I do not agree. And as far as what I wish to talk about, which is primarily the Second Amendment, I do not believe that either party has our best interest at heart. Okay? Because they both have proven that they will gladly erode rights established by the Bill of Rights in order to further their agendas. But wait a minute, the Republican Party, they're pro-gun. They want to protect the Second Amendment. No, and I will talk about that further, but I believe that Republicans are the ones that we need to watch the most. Okay. Now, of course, you're going to want proof of what I'm saying. Well, let's talk about that. In 1986, Ronald Reagan was the president. And Ronald Reagan signed legislation that effectively prohibited the citizenry from owning a fully automatic weapon manufactured from that date forward. Okay. What did that effectively do? Okay. That effectively made a very finite amount of fully automatic weapons that the citizenry could own. What was another effect from that? Well, immediately the prices for those firearms rose astronomically and effectively made it very difficult, if not impossible, for the average citizen to afford. Okay. Another effect of the signing of that legislation is because there is a finite number of guns. If a gun is broken beyond repair, that's one less gun that's available to the citizenry. If some of those firearms were used in the commission of a crime and are confiscated and destroyed, that's less firearms available to the citizenry. Okay, so it is set up that that finite number of fully automatic weapons will do nothing but get smaller. Okay. And Ronald Reagan knew that. He was an intelligent man. He was able to see what he was doing. Now, was that as a result of some kind of backroom deal to further something else in his agenda? I don't know. But what I am saying is that our Constitution and our Bill of Rights is not something that should be eroded in a backroom deal. Okay? And a Republican president, one that is respected to the degree of Ronald Reagan, did just that. All right. You see, when I look at the Second Amendment and what I believe the intention of the Second Amendment, I first need to give a little background on how I see our history. After the War of Independence, this band of states sent representatives in order to form a government. Okay. Those representatives were very aware of the fact that the citizenry was apprehensive. You see, they had already been ruled by a tyrannical form of government, of which they had little to no representation. And the citizenry was not willing to replace one form of tyranny for another. So these representatives put together a government that had a lot of checks and balances to ensure that one person or one group would be limited in the amount of power it could attain. There was much discussion over federal government and states government and how that would play out with that same thing in mind. Right? Federal government was to be limited. So even after that, even after all that consideration, the representatives still believed that they needed to go another step further. And in order to establish guarantees to the citizenry, they came up with the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to our Constitution. Now, I don't look at them as amendments. I look at them as guarantees to our citizens. Okay? Now, much has been written and said, and there's been videos made and comments and so forth and so on about the Bill of Rights. Okay? As I see it, what I've seen is I've seen some people say that, well, you know, the first two are the most important. I've heard some, and I've heard other opinions where the Second Amendment sort of guarantees the rest. And I don't know if I disagree with that, but what I will say is that our Bill of Rights in its entirety is equally important and should be defended staunchly. Okay. But when I look at the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, okay, I think that much thought was put into that. That was, in my opinion, the ultimate check and balance that the citizenry has to a government. Right? I believe that was put into place to guarantee the citizens that they have a right to defend themselves from threats outside of this nation and from within, and that it is the ultimate check and balance against a government should it ever turn itself against the citizens. There's been much said about the use of the words, the right to bear arms, right? Arms in particular. Well, a lot of people would like to think that that just means the muskets and the firearms that were available of that day. But see, I thought it was intuitive. I thought that it was well thought out to use the word arm. If they had used that word in a document 200 years earlier than that, that would have meant a sword and a bow and arrow, or whatever else, spear maybe. That is arms, and I think that was the intention. Arms. Arms that are available to the citizenry. Okay. Today, I think that includes any and all small arms. I think that they should be available to the citizenry. 500 years from now, whatever ray gun or laser or whatever type of weaponry that is available at that time, I think is covered by the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms. Okay. So I think it was intuitive of the founders when they used that word, and I believe that that was their intent. Okay. Much has been said to distract us from the Second Amendment and maybe slowly begin to change what our thought process should be towards the Second Amendment. And what I mean by that is that many people in power have declared that that they support the Second Amendment, and they would never do anything to erode the fine tradition of hunting that we have in our country. The Second Amendment was never derived, it was never intended to protect hunting. Okay? It was not set up to protect your grandfather's goose hunting shotgun or your deer hunting rifle. It was set in place to provide the citizenry with a means of defense. Okay? And any kind of discussion that starts talking about hunting and things of that nature, that is a distraction. Because see, along that same lines is, you know, we're not going after your bolt action deer rifle. You know, we're just saying that these guns over here are bad, right? That's a distraction. That's a distraction that both parties use. Now, to further give examples of why I say we have to watch the Republicans. Okay, is George H.W. Bush. You know, he signed into place an assault weapons ban. Yeah, yes he did. And I know you just got finished Googling about Ronald Reagan, but go ahead and Google George H.W. Bush and assault weapons ban. Okay. See, he put a ban into place that specifically went after guns that are imported into this country. Oh, but you're wrong because, you know, I just bought a new AK. Well, let's talk about that for a minute. See, his ban said that a gun has to have a certain amount of American-made parts in order for it to be considered U.S. manufactured. Or that is the loophole of which many people have obtained newly manufactured, like an AK. Now, before I go further, let's talk about terms for a minute. Much has been said, especially here on YouTube, about people getting on other people about the wrong use of terms, assault weapons and assault rifles and, you know, battle rifles and whatever, the clip and magazine. Let's not, that's just noise, guys, and let's be better than that, okay? Now, while you are sharing your disdain over someone using the wrong terminology, the legislation they put forth gets it right, and that's the important thing. That's what we need to keep our eye on the ball concerning, okay? So much was said, oh, they talk about an AKM, and that's not a real AK-47, and you know, so therefore it's not an assault rifle. Waste of breath. It's a waste of breath. Because as I said earlier, legislation that's been put into place, it gets the terms right. It describes them, and it effectively deteriorates our Second Amendment. Okay? So, if you look at that law, if you look at that legislation that George H.W. Bush put into place, you have to ask yourself, was that part of a backroom deal? Was there something that he was looking to get out of that? Where I'll say again, our Constitution and our Bill of Rights should not be eroded in some backroom deal. And it is incumbent on you and I to ensure that our representatives understand that we will not tolerate erosion to our Constitution or Bill of Rights. We have no one to blame but ourselves. Okay? We have the government that we put into place. And we have to be vigilant in ensuring that we send representatives to government that hold our same ideals. Okay? Something was said to me a long time ago, and it's come to ring true, and that is Democrats talk about taking your guns, Republicans take them. Okay? Now that is true. These two legislations has done that to us. They have taken guns away from us. Okay? See, I used to have an HK-91. I used to have a Galil. There's two examples of firearms that I can no longer purchase new today. The only ones available for me to legally own are ones that were in this country before that legislation that George H.W. Bush signed. And I kick myself forever selling those things because they would be worth a ton of money today. Again, those weapons, their value has risen astronomically, and I no longer will attempt to afford one. There are many other guns from Beretta, from Valmet. You just name it. They cannot be imported into this country because there's not enough American manufactured parts to make them compliant to that assault weapons ban. Now today, much is said in order of causing us to be aware of Clinton's ban, but Clinton's ban is gone. George W. Bush's, H.W. Bush's ban is in place. Ronald Reagan's legislation is in place. So we cannot trust the pro-gun organizations to even keep us or put our trust into them to protect our rights or keep us informed. That's what I should say. Okay? The NRA has sent me more legislation about Obamacare and repealing Obamacare than repealing legislation in place by Republican presidents concerning the Second Amendment. How is that? That is because we have allowed that. We cannot put our trust in these organizations. We have to ensure that we take the proper steps to make sure organizations and make sure our governments reflect our ideals. Now, what I'm saying you may not like, but it is true. All right. For the NRA to give Mitt Romney an A rating for his gun legislation is nothing short of partisan politics. Look at what he did in Massachusetts as a governor. Now, I challenge folks that live in Massachusetts to tell me that that was really a coming together of pro-gun and anti-gun groups. I challenge people that actually live in Massachusetts that are pro-gun to tell me that they were willing to agree to these bans, to capacity limitations and the actual ban of firearms that took place in Massachusetts. I also challenge anyone to come up with one governor who put into place more restrictive gun legislation than Mitt Romney. See, I'm not sure Obama's any better. I'm really not saying that he is. You know, he supported anti-gun legislation when he was a senator. And as a president, really the only thing that he's done is to sign legislation into law to allow people to carry guns in national parks. Now, do I think that he may act quite differently in a second term where he does not have to be so politically minded? I don't know. I don't think either of those two presidential candidates are pro-gun. And I question either of them's loyalty to the Second Amendment. So these are just some of my thoughts. We have to remain politically aware. We have to remain politically involved to ensure that our ideals are reflected in the representatives we send to government. So with that, I'll end this video and say thank you for watching. I appreciate it. I promise not too many political-minded videos in the future. But thank you for watching. And remember to shoot straight on the range and in life. Thanks.